Elon Musk sat in his sleek minimalist office, the walls of glass reflecting the sprawling view of Tesla's main campus. He was surrounded by the hum of innovation, engineers at their workstations, the buzz of new designs being finalized, and the endless drone of factory machinery churning out the next big breakthrough in electric cars. Yet despite all the success, something was missing. He'd been hearing the same feedback for months from his executives, from the leaders of his teams. The company is doing great, but the people... Elon leaned back in his chair, the soft leather creaking under his weight. He stared out of the window, feeling a twinge of uncertainty gnaw at him. For all the accolades, all the achievements, something didn't sit right. There had been whispers, quiet murmurings among employees, long hours, exhaustion, and more than anything, a growing sense of disconnection. He had built Tesla to revolutionize the world, but what had it cost? He had always prided himself on being hands-on, but could he really say he knew what his people were going through on the ground in the trenches day after day? I need to know what's really going on here. It was this thought that sparked the idea, and it felt like a sudden, impulsive decision. Elon stood up abruptly, pacing across the floor. He wasn't a man who often second-guessed himself, but this felt important. What if I went undercover? What if he could experience life as his employees did, work alongside them, listen to them, and see firsthand the challenges they faced? He reached for his phone and dialed his chief of staff. I need to make a change. Starting tomorrow, I'm going to work at Tesla undercover. No one can know it's me. The line was silent for a moment. Then came the voice of his assistant, clearly surprised. Elon, are you serious? You mean work on the floor with the employees? Exactly, I'll blend in. No one will recognize me. Okay, the assistant hesitated. But why? Elon's gaze drifted back to the window, where the sun was starting to dip below the horizon. He didn't answer right away, just letting the weight of the decision settle in. I need to see what it's really like. I need to understand. The next morning, Elon found himself in a nondescript office, staring at his reflection in a cheap mirror. A plain black cap sat low on his head, obscuring most of his face. His clothes were simple, jeans and a t-shirt. It was the exact opposite of how he normally dressed, but that was the point. He wanted to be invisible. He looked different already. The mirror reflected a man who wasn't the billionaire CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, but a regular employee about to clock in. The idea felt both exhilarating and absurd at the same time, but he was committed now. As he walked through the parking lot and approached the entrance, a security guard nodded at him without a second glance. Elon barely contained his smile. This was working. Inside, the building buzzed with activity. The air was thick with the scent of oil and metal, the sound of machines whirring in the background. It was the heart of Tesla, where the magic happened. The place that made all the electric vehicles Elon was so proud of. But to him, it felt different now, like stepping into a whole new world. Elon was escorted to the break room by a woman who barely spared him a glance, too busy on her phone. He realized then just how much he had taken for granted, how easy it was to walk around and be treated differently because of who he was. But here, no one knew him, and that's exactly how he wanted it. As he entered the break room, a group of employees sat around a table. They were laughing, talking about their weekends, but there was a heaviness to the air, a kind of underlying tension that Elon could sense immediately. The group grew quiet when he approached, and he gave them a nod, a friendly smile that felt like a disguise. "Hey there, I'm Mark," he said, using the name he had chosen for his undercover persona. "I'm new here." They nodded back, but the smiles didn't quite reach their eyes. There was something more. He could feel it. As the day went on, Elon tried to adjust to his new role. He worked alongside his colleagues, helping with assembly line tasks, listening to their conversations, and trying his best to blend in. He'd been expecting some level of discomfort, but nothing had prepared him for the emotional disconnect he was starting to sense. It was subtle at first, but as the hours dragged on, he began to notice a pattern. Many of the workers were tired, exhausted, even, but it wasn't just physical fatigue. There was a deep weariness in their eyes, an emotional toll that was harder to place. Some of them had been working long shifts, others had families at home, and a few seemed to be barely holding it together. Then there was the woman. He noticed her across the room, sitting by herself, her shoulders hunched. She hadn't said much all day, and when she looked up, their eyes briefly met. He couldn't help but see something raw in her eyes. She was hiding something. Something more than just the stress of a long shift. It wasn't until later that he overheard her. It wasn't intentional, but as he was passing by the break room, he heard the sound of muffled crying. It stopped him in his tracks. The voice was unmistakable, and the sadness in it was almost palpable. He couldn't place it, he didn't even know who the woman was, but something about it hit him hard. For a moment Elon froze, feeling a cold shiver run down his spine. In that moment it wasn't about Tesla. It wasn't about the company. It was about something much bigger. There was pain here. Real pain. He didn't know why, but this moment, this glimpse into someone's private struggle made everything feel different. All the excitement and energy of the day seemed to fade into the background. This wasn't what he had imagined when he decided to go undercover, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the verge of uncovering something profound, something he didn't fully understand yet. This is just the beginning, he thought, to himself, and it was. Elon sat in the break room pretending to sip his coffee as the other employees trickled in. His mind, however, was far from the mundane chatter about the latest sports game or the upcoming weekend plans. He couldn't shake the image of Sarah, the woman whose tears he had accidentally overheard. He hadn't gotten a good look at her face, but the sound of her crying haunted him. It felt like a personal violation, hearing someone's pain without their consent. Elon had expected this undercover experience to be eye-opening, but what he hadn't anticipated was how quickly the emotional weight would hit him. Sure, he had seen stressed workers before in his high-pressure meetings with executives, but this was different. These were people, real living beings, bearing the brunt of the company's relentless march toward progress. He tried to shake it off, telling himself that this was just the beginning. But as the day continued, more instances of discomfort crept up on him. There was Jake, a middle-aged man working on the assembly line who seemed distracted and drained. His shoulders slumped as he methodically tightened bolts on a vehicle that would be shipped out to eager customers. When Elon spoke to him briefly about the work, Jake didn't meet his eyes. He simply nodded and went back to his task, as if he couldn't spare the energy for a real conversation. But it wasn't just Jake. Everywhere Elon looked, he saw signs of fatigue. Workers hurried from one task to the next, glancing at the clock, eyes filled with resignation. The stress was palpable, like an invisible cloud hovering over the entire factory floor. By lunchtime, Elon had spent hours in the midst of it all, sorting through parts, assembling components and assisting in tasks he had long since forgotten. His hands were dirty, his muscles sore. He could barely keep up with the pace. For someone who spent most of his days brainstorming in boardrooms or overseeing big-picture decisions, the physical toll of factory life was overwhelming. But that was nothing compared to the emotional toll. As Elon took a seat at the long cafeteria table, his eyes scanned the room. The employees were eating in clusters, talking in low voices, most of them barely interacting with the others. It was almost as if there was a silent agreement to keep things low-key. It made him uncomfortable. He knew that corporate culture wasn't always easy to build, but this felt like something more. The disconnect between the higher-ups and the workers on the ground was so stark it was impossible to ignore. He glanced at Sarah again. She was seated at the far end of the room, eating quietly by herself. Elon had been watching her off and on since his first moment of noticing her. She hadn't cried again, but there was a sadness in her eyes that no amount of makeup or effort could conceal. He couldn't take it anymore. He had to find out what was going on. He stood up and walked over to her, his legs feeling heavy as if the weight of the entire company was pressing down on him. She didn't look up when he approached, her focus still on her food. He took a deep breath. "Hey," Elon said, trying to sound casual. "Mind if I sit?" She glanced up briefly, clearly surprised to see him standing there. "Oh, sure." She made space for him on the bench, though she didn't speak further. Elon sat down, awkwardly picking at his own meal. The silence stretched out longer than he expected. He could tell she was avoiding looking at him, but he was determined. This was what he was here for, getting to know the people who made Tesla run and understanding what they were really going through. Finally, he broke the silence. "You seem like you've been working pretty hard lately," he said. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she pushed her food around on her plate, her fingers absently tracing the edge of the bowl. Elon could sense her hesitation, her reluctance to open up, but he pressed on. "It's been a long week, huh? I guess," she said softly, not meeting his eyes. Elon leaned forward slightly. "You don't have to tell me everything, but if there's something on your mind, I'm happy to listen. I know it can get overwhelming around here." There was a long pause. He was about to say something else when Sarah finally spoke. "It's not the job," she said quietly. "I love what I do. But it's everything else, the stress, the deadlines, the pressure. To do more and more, it's hard to keep up sometimes." Her voice wavered at the end, and Elon could see the subtle tears gathering in the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them away quickly, as if embarrassed. Elon's heart ached as he looked at her. "I get it," he said gently. "It's not easy. Sometimes it feels like we're all just racing towards something, but we don't even know what's at the finish line." Sarah let out a small, bitter laugh. "Yeah, that's the thing. The pace never slows down and no one ever stops to ask if we're okay. It's all about the next model, the next milestone. But what happens when you're too exhausted to keep going?" Elon's thoughts raced. How many others were feeling the same way? How many people were quietly suffering under the weight of expectations? He had known Tesla's journey would be difficult. He'd expected sacrifices, challenges, and growing pains. But he had never imagined it would come at the expense of the people who made it all possible. "I'm sorry," Elon said, his voice soft but sincere. "I didn't realize how much you were carrying. I should have paid more attention." She looked up at him then, her eyes narrowing slightly. "It's not your fault. You're the boss. You don't see everything. No one does." She glanced around the room, then back at him. I don't know if I can keep doing this. It feels like no one cares about us, only what we can produce." Elon swallowed hard, feeling something deep inside him shift. This wasn't just about business anymore. It was personal. And for the first time he felt like he understood. "I care," he said, his voice firm, "and I'm going to make sure things change. This isn't right. Not anymore." Sarah didn't respond immediately, but the faintest glimmer of hope flickered in her eyes. Elon wasn't sure what would come of his promise, but he was certain of one thing: things were about to change. As the day wound down and Elon prepared to leave for the evening, the weight of the experiences he had gathered hung heavily on him. It wasn't just about the work. It was about people, their struggles, and the emotional cost of the relentless pace he had set for Tesla. He had come here to learn. Now, he knew there was more to fix than just product lines and profits. There was a human element that had been ignored for too long, and this was only the beginning. The following day, Elon returned to Tesla's factory floor, his mind preoccupied with the conversation he'd had with Sarah the previous day. Her words echoed in his head. "It feels like no one cares about us, only what we can produce." He couldn't shake the guilt and the realization that, for all his efforts to revolutionize the world with sustainable energy, he had failed to prioritize the people who made it all happen. As Elon moved through the factory, something felt different. He was more attuned to the quiet tension that seemed to hang in the air, more aware of the exhaustion etched into the faces of the workers. The laughter and casual chatter that usually filled the space seemed muted today, replaced by a hushed atmosphere that reflected the deepening unease within the company. Elon found himself spending more time with the employees, trying to get a sense of their daily struggles. He worked alongside a group of assembly line workers who were trying to meet their production targets, struggling to keep pace with the demanding quotas. Their hands were raw from handling metal parts all day, and their eyes were heavy from lack of sleep. "Hey, how's it going?" Elon asked one of the workers, a man named Daniel who appeared to be in his early 30s. "Same as always," Daniel replied with a weary smile. "Keep working, keep pushing, and hopefully make it through another day." Elon could see the exhaustion in Daniel's eyes, the way his shoulders slumped as if the weight of the world was on them. "You've been here a while?" Elon asked. 5 years, Daniel said, pausing for a moment as he wiped his brow. "It's a good job. Don't get me wrong, but sometimes it feels like we're just another cog in the machine. No one really sees us unless something goes wrong." Elon nodded, understanding the unspoken message. Tesla had always been about innovation, about creating something bigger than themselves, but in doing so, they had forgotten the very people who made that innovation possible. As the day wore on, Elon's frustration only grew. Every worker he spoke to, every interaction he had, confirmed his worst fears. The company's employees were being stretched thin. They were working tirelessly, but their contributions were being overshadowed by the drive for efficiency, for speed, for the next big thing. In their efforts to meet production deadlines and push the boundaries of technology, the human side of the equation had been lost. It wasn't just the long hours and the demanding targets that were taking a toll on the workers. It was the emotional strain of never feeling seen, never feeling valued beyond their ability to produce. Elon had heard about the toll of burnout in the tech world, but hearing it firsthand from his own employees made it all the more real. Later that afternoon, Elon found himself in the middle of the factory floor, surrounded by workers moving swiftly, from one task to the next. The sound of machinery filled the air, but there was a sense of urgency in the atmosphere, like the workers were racing against something unseen. He spotted Sarah again, this time working alongside a group of other employees. She was assembling parts with precise movements, her brow furrowed in concentration. There was something about her demeanor that stood out to him. She was focused, yes, but there was also a certain distance in her eyes, a kind of detachment that made it clear she was somewhere else mentally. Elon approached her cautiously, unsure of how to begin. He had promised to help, but he wasn't sure where to start. "Hey, Sarah," Elon said, his voice quieter this time. She looked up, startled. "Oh, hey. Mark, right?" He nodded, trying to keep his tone casual. "I noticed you've been working pretty hard today. How are you holding up?" She shrugged, not bothering to hide the weariness in her face. "Same as always," she said. "It's been a tough week, but we pushed through. That's all we can do." Elon's heart sank. He could see the cracks in her facade, the way she was trying to hide how much she was really struggling. He wanted to say something, anything, to offer her comfort, but instead he simply stood there for a moment, letting the silence stretch between them. Finally, Sarah broke the quiet. "I'm just tired, you know. I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. I'm burnt out, Mark, and I'm not the only one. Everyone here is." Elon could feel the weight of her words. The burnout was real, and it wasn't just a passing feeling. It was a deep, pervasive exhaustion that had seeped into the very soul of the factory. "I understand," he said quietly, "and I'm sorry. You shouldn't have to feel like this." Sarah shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "It's not your fault. It's just how things are. Tesla's growing fast, and we're all expected to keep up. It's like we're running a marathon with no finish line in sight." Elon felt a lump form in his throat. He had always known that Tesla was a demanding company, but hearing it from someone on the front lines, someone who was actually living it, was different. It wasn't just about the pressure. It was about the emotional toll that came with it. He stayed with Sarah for a while, talking with her about the job, about the challenges she faced, and about the pressure that weighed on her. And as he listened, Elon began to realize just how deep the problem ran. This wasn't just an issue of work-life balance. It was about a culture that had been built on the pursuit of perfection at the expense of the people who made it all happen. As the workday came to a close, Elon felt a gnawing sense of urgency. The problems were bigger than he had initially realized, and fixing them would take more than just tweaking the company's policies. It would take a complete shift in how Tesla operated, from the top down. He spent the evening reflecting on everything he had learned so far, piecing together the puzzle that had been hiding in plain sight. It wasn't just about improving the work environment. It was about building a culture that recognized and valued the contributions of every employee, no matter their role. For too long, Tesla had been so focused on the next breakthrough, the next step in innovation, that it had forgotten to nurture the very people who were driving that innovation. Elon knew what he had to do next. It wouldn't be easy, but it was necessary. The next morning, Elon woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. He wasn't just a CEO anymore. He was a man on a mission to ensure that Tesla's success wasn't just measured by the cars they built, but by the well-being of the people who built them. And it all started with understanding their struggles. As he walked into the factory that morning, he knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time, he felt like he was on the right path. Elon's mind was still racing as he walked through the factory the next day, trying to digest everything he had learned from his first few days undercover. The reality of the employees' struggles was hitting him hard, and he knew that change couldn't come soon enough. But change wouldn't be easy, and he couldn't just push a button and make it happen. There was no simple fix. He had seen the exhaustion in Sarah's eyes, heard the frustration in her voice. He had felt the same weight pressing on every worker in the factory. It wasn't just about working harder or faster. It was about working smarter, about finding ways to maintain balance and sanity in a system that was pushing people to their limits. The question was, how could he do that? How could he make Tesla a place where people weren't just machines in a production line, but valued, appreciated, and empowered? As he walked toward the assembly line, Elon found himself face to face with a familiar face. Daniel, the worker from the day before. Daniel was hunched over his workstation, his hands deftly assembling parts as the machines hummed around him. His face was drawn with exhaustion, and his movements were mechanical, like a man who had long since lost the energy to care. "Hey, Daniel," Elon called out, approaching him. Daniel looked up, surprised to see Elon again. His expression was guarded, as if he wasn't sure what to make of the man standing in front of him. After all, Elon wasn't the type of person people normally interacted with on the factory floor. "Oh, hey," Daniel said cautiously. "You're still here?" Elon gave a small, knowing smile. "Yeah, I'm not leaving anytime soon. I want to make sure I understand what's really going on here." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Understand? What's there to understand? It's just work. We show up, we do what we're told, and we get paid. That's how it works." Elon felt a pang of sadness at his words. There was a truth to what Daniel said, but it was the kind of truth that was born out of apathy. It was clear that Daniel had given up on expecting anything more from his job, from the company. "I know it seems like that," Elon said quietly, "but I don't think it should be. You should feel proud of the work you do here. It's important and it makes a difference." Daniel's eyes flickered for a moment, a spark of something deeper than exhaustion, something that resembled hope. "Yeah, maybe. But when you're putting in 12-hour days, missing family events and feeling like you're just a cog in the wheel, it's hard to feel like you're making a difference. At the end of the day, all that matters is the numbers, the speed, the efficiency. No one cares about how we're doing mentally, how we're holding up." Elon's chest tightened as he processed Daniel's words. It was the same message he'd been hearing over and over again from Sarah and from others. Tesla's employees were caught in a system that didn't care about their well-being. They were just another resource to be optimized. "I hear you," Elon said, his voice firm. "But I'm here to change that. I don't want this to be just another job for you. I want you to feel like you're part of something bigger. You're not just here to hit targets. You're part of a team, a family." Daniel seemed to consider this for a moment, his brow furrowing. "A family, huh?" he muttered, more to himself than to Elon. "I haven't heard that word around here in a while." Elon nodded. "That's exactly why I'm here. We need to change how we look at each other. We're all in this together. But to do that, we need to listen to each other, and we need to put people first. Always." Daniel's skeptical gaze softened, but he didn't say anything. He simply nodded and went back to his work. But Elon could tell that something had shifted. Maybe not a lot, but it was a start. The day continued, but Elon's conversations with the workers stuck with him. He kept hearing the same themes of burnout, stress, and emotional exhaustion. It wasn't just about the workload, it was about the disconnect, the feeling of being unheard. It was about a culture that had forgotten the people who made it all happen. As the day wore on, Elon met with a few other key employees who had been working at Tesla for years. Each conversation confirmed the same pattern. People felt underappreciated, overworked, and disconnected from the company's larger mission. And though many were still passionate about the work they did, it was becoming harder and harder to ignore the cracks in the foundation. He had expected some level of dissatisfaction, but the extent of it was eye-opening. Tesla had always been at the forefront of innovation, pushing the boundaries of what was possible in electric vehicles and sustainable energy. But somewhere, along the way, the company had lost sight of its most important asset, its people. Elon's mind was spinning as he left the factory for the evening. He knew something needed to change, and he was determined to lead that change. But the question was where to begin. The next morning, Elon gathered a small group of senior leadership in one of Tesla's meeting rooms. They sat around a large table, but the usual energy in the room was gone. There was a certain heaviness in the air, a sense of anticipation. That made everyone tense. "We need to talk," Elon began, his voice serious. The team looked at him, sensing the shift in tone. Elon had been known for his directness, but today his intensity felt different. There was something urgent in his eyes, a resolve that made everyone sit up straighter. "We've been pushing for faster production, better efficiency, and bigger numbers. But somewhere along the way, we've forgotten the people who are driving all of this. We've created a culture that prioritizes results over well-being, and that's not sustainable. Not for the company, and not for the people." The room was silent. No one spoke, but the weight of his words hung in the air. "I'm not here to point fingers or make excuses," Elon continued. "I'm here to ask for change. We need to shift the way we do things. We need to focus on building a culture that values our people as much as our products." One of the senior managers, Greg, spoke up cautiously. "I agree with you, Elon, but changing a culture isn't easy. We've built this company on performance and results. It's what got us here." "I know," Elon said, cutting him off. "But it's also what's holding us back. We can't continue to push for excellence while ignoring the people who are burning out. We need to listen, and we need to act. We need to create a balance. Productivity and people both have to be prioritized equally." Greg paused for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, but where do we start?" Elon leaned forward, his eyes focused. "We start by changing the way we work. We start by listening to our employees, giving them the support they need, and building an environment where they can thrive, not just survive." The room was quiet for a moment, and then, one by one, the senior leadership team began to speak. Ideas were exchanged, plans were discussed, and slowly, a new direction began to take shape. Elon knew it wasn't going to be easy, but for the first time in days, he felt a flicker of hope. Change was coming. As Elon left the meeting, he couldn't help but feel a sense of resolve. He had learned a lot in his time undercover, and now it was time to use that knowledge to do something meaningful. He knew that fixing Tesla's culture wouldn't happen overnight, but he was ready to take the first step. And as he thought about Sarah's words, "No one cares about how we're doing mentally," he made a silent promise to himself. He was going to change that. For everyone. The next few weeks were a whirlwind for Elon. He had set his plan into motion. Conversations with his senior leadership team had been the first step, but there was still so much to be done. He knew that change wouldn't happen quickly or easily, but he also knew that it was necessary. Tesla had grown into a giant, a leader in the tech and automotive industries, but somewhere along the way, the human side of the company had gotten lost. His undercover experience had shown him that the employees, the lifeblood of Tesla, were stretched thin, overworked, and undervalued. The culture had become one of relentless pressure, with little regard for the toll it was taking on the individuals who were supposed to power the company forward. Elon was determined to fix that. The first initiative he introduced was focused on transparency. He wanted employees at all levels to feel like they were a part of the conversation, that their voices mattered. He began holding town hall meetings, something Tesla had rarely done before. These weren't just about the company's quarterly goals or the latest breakthroughs in technology. They were about listening. Elon wanted his people to feel seen and heard, and it was clear that he had underestimated how much this simple act could mean to them. At the first town hall, employees from different departments shared their thoughts, their frustrations, and their hopes. Some were nervous at first, unsure if their concerns would be taken seriously, but as the hours went by, the walls started to come down. Elon listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and showing a level of vulnerability he had never displayed before. It was a raw, real conversation, one where the focus wasn't on performance metrics, but on the emotional and physical well-being of the employees. Look, I know we've pushed you all hard, and I know that sometimes it feels like you're just numbers on a chart. But that's not the kind of company I want Tesla to be, Elon said during the meeting. You're not just here to meet quotas. You're the ones making this possible, and I want to make sure you feel that. Sarah, the woman he had spoken with early on, stood up during the meeting. She was a bit hesitant at first, but then she spoke with a quiet intensity that grabbed everyone's attention. Thank you for saying that, Elon, she said, her voice steady. I've been working here for years, and it's always felt like we're just pushing forward, never looking back. But no one ever asked us how we're doing. We're human, not machines. We have families. We have lives outside of this place. I don't think anyone here wants to quit, but sometimes it feels like we're forced to choose between our jobs and our health. Elon's heart sank as he heard Sarah's words. He could feel the pain in her voice, the frustration that had built up over time. This wasn't just about numbers or production. This was about real people who were struggling to balance the demands of work with the needs of their personal lives. Hear you, Sarah, Elon replied. And you're right, we've got to do better, we're going to do better. It's not just about getting the job done, it's about making sure you're supported along the way. The town hall lasted for hours, and when it was over, the employees trickled out, some visibly relieved that their voices had been heard. It was the first of many meetings, but it was a turning point. It was a small ripple in the larger pond. But Elon could already sense the change starting to take hold. People were beginning to believe that things could be different. But the real challenge was what came next. Action. The conversations had been important, but words alone wouldn't solve the problem. Elon knew that for the culture of Tesla to truly shift, the company needed to implement real changes that would have a tangible impact on its employees. He pushed for a comprehensive review of the company's work-life balance policies, and after weeks of discussions, he introduced flexible working hours and better paid time off. Employees would have more opportunities to recharge, to take time for their families, and to take care of their mental health. In addition, Tesla launched an employee wellness program, providing resources for counseling, fitness programs, and stress management workshops. For many of the employees, this was the first time they had felt like their well-being was truly valued. Elon also implemented more collaborative team-building initiatives, activities that weren't about hitting production targets but about building a sense of community and mutual support among the employees. He wanted Tesla's culture to be one of innovation, yes, but also one of empathy and understanding. He knew it was a big shift, but he was committed to making it work. It wasn't going to be easy, and there would likely be pushback from some corners of the company. But Elon was determined to lead by example. He was more present than ever on the factory floor, engaging with employees at all levels, from the assembly line workers to the engineers and managers. Weeks passed, and though the changes were still in their infancy, Elon could already see signs of improvement. The mood on the factory floor had lightened. There was more laughter, more conversations happening between workers. People were starting to take pride in their work again, not because they had to, but because they felt seen and valued. And then, one day, as Elon was walking through the assembly line, he heard something that stopped him dead in his tracks. Was a cry. At first he thought it might be a machine malfunctioning or someone in distress, but as he followed the sound, he discovered something he hadn't anticipated. It was a young employee, a woman named Emily, who was sitting on the floor, her back against a wall, sobbing quietly. Elon's heart went out to her. He had seen the strain on so many faces, but this was different. This was raw, unfiltered emotion, a moment of vulnerability that no one had taken the time to address until now. Without thinking, Elon approached her. "Hey, Emily, what's going on?" The young woman looked up at him, her face streaked with tears. She didn't seem to recognize him at first, but when she saw his concerned expression, something in her eyes shifted. "It's just everything," Emily said between sobs. "I've been here for over a year, and every day it's the same. The pressure, the hours, the expectations. I can't keep up. I feel like I'm losing myself." Elon sat down beside her, his mind racing. This wasn't the first time he'd heard someone express this kind of frustration, but seeing it firsthand, this moment of human vulnerability struck him to his core. "Emily, I'm so sorry. I know things have been tough," Elon said, his voice quiet but sincere. "But you're not alone. We're changing things here. We're going to make sure that no one ever feels like this again. You matter. All of you matter." The words were simple, but as Emily looked at him, there was a flicker of hope in her eyes, something she hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time, Elon realized the full weight of what he had done. Tesla had been built on the idea of changing the world, but now he was trying to change the way people felt about their work, their lives, and their place in the company. It wouldn't be easy, and there would be more difficult moments ahead. But for the first time in a long time, Elon felt a genuine sense of hope, a belief that Tesla could truly become the company it had always strived to be, one that not only changed the world, but cared for the people who made that change possible. As Elon left the factory that day, he made a silent promise to himself and to the people who had trusted him with their dreams. He was going to see this through. For Emily, for Sarah, for everyone. Tesla was about to become something more than just a business. It was going to be a family. The days that followed were a whirlwind of action. Elon's conversations with employees had sparked something, an energy that began to spread like wildfire through the company. It wasn't just about the changes to work hours, wellness programs, and paid time off. It was the larger, more profound shift in mindset. For the first time in years, employees felt like they were a part of something bigger than just their job. They felt like they were being seen, heard, and valued. But as with any massive change, it wasn't without its challenges. Not everyone was on board, and not everyone understood what Elon was trying to do. Some saw the changes as unnecessary, thinking that the company had been successful for so long by focusing on results, not emotions. There were murmurs of resistance from the senior ranks, and a sense of disbelief that the culture at Tesla could really change that quickly. Elon knew that convincing everyone to buy into the new vision of Tesla would take time. But the fact that change was already taking root among the employees gave him hope. The positive feedback he had been receiving was overwhelming. Workers were beginning to share stories of how they felt more connected to their teams, how they were able to take time off without the constant guilt that had plagued them before. Slowly but surely, the wheels of transformation were in motion. One morning, as Elon was walking through the factory floor, he was met with a familiar face. It was Sarah, the woman he had spoken to on his first day undercover. She had been one of the first to speak out about the company's culture and the toll it had taken on her, and her words had left a lasting impression on him. She walked up to him with a hesitant smile. "Elon, can we talk?" "Of course," he said, stopping in his tracks. "I just wanted to thank you," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "I'm not sure if you know this, but the changes you've made, they've made a real difference. I've been here for years, and I've never seen anything like this. People are starting to feel like they matter." Elon's heart swelled with a mix of pride and relief. "I'm glad to hear that. But it's not just me, it's everyone." "You're all part of this." Sarah nodded, but there was something more in her eyes now. A spark, a lightness that hadn't been there before. "I don't think you understand how big this is," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "For so long, we felt like we were just pushing through each day, just trying to survive. But now, it feels like we're actually living. We're working towards something meaningful." Elon smiled, genuinely touched by her words. "That's exactly what I want. I want Tesla to be a place where people don't just come to work. They come to thrive. To feel like they're making a difference, not just in the world, but in their own lives." Sarah smiled back. And for the first time in a long while, Elon saw something that had been missing from the factory for so long. Hope. Over the next few weeks, the ripple effect from the town halls and the new policies continued to spread. Employees from all departments were talking about the changes, discussing how they could be a part of something bigger, something that aligned not only with the company's mission, but with their own values. It wasn't just about the work. It was about the people behind it. But not everything was smooth sailing. The pressure to meet production targets remained high, and there were still a few workers who resisted the changes, clinging to the old way of doing things. They didn't understand why the focus on well-being and culture mattered so much when the company was still struggling to meet ambitious goals. Elon didn't let that discourage him. He knew that culture wouldn't change overnight, and the work was far from over. He spent more time on the factory floor, observing, listening, and making himself available to employees who had questions or concerns. It wasn't enough to simply implement policies. It was about building trust, one conversation at a time. One afternoon, he was sitting in his office when Greg, one of his senior managers, walked in. Greg had been skeptical about the changes at first, but over time he'd begun to see the benefits of the new approach. Still, he had some lingering doubts. "Elon," Greg said, sitting down across from him, "I've been thinking about the changes, and I get what you're trying to do. I really do. But I'm still not convinced it's going to work in the long term. The production numbers are still, well, they're still not where they need to be." Elon leaned back in his chair, meeting Greg's gaze. "I hear you, but let me ask you something. How do we measure success? Is it just about the numbers, or is it about creating a company where people are proud to work? A company where people feel good about what they do?" Greg paused, clearly wrestling with the question. "I get that, but there's still the issue of performance. If we don't meet our targets, we won't stay competitive." Elon nodded. "I agree. We can't ignore the importance of performance. But what I'm asking is this. Can we be better in both areas? Can we achieve high performance while still taking care of our people? I believe we can, and I think the results will speak for themselves." There was a long silence in the room, as Greg absorbed Elon's words. Finally, he nodded, a reluctant but thoughtful expression on his face. "You might be right. I guess I'm just used to the old way of doing things." Elon smiled. "It's a big shift, but I think it's the right one." In the weeks that followed, the changes continued to take shape. Employee engagement was at an all-time high, and there was a sense of camaraderie on the factory floor that hadn't existed before. The wellness programs were fully integrated, and more employees were taking advantage of the mental health resources and fitness initiatives. People weren't just showing up to work anymore. They were bringing their best selves to work. And the results, they spoke for themselves. Tesla's production numbers, though not where they wanted them to be, were steadily improving. But more importantly, the company's morale had skyrocketed. Employees were more engaged, more invested, and more willing to go the extra mile. The focus on people, on their well-being, had created an environment where everyone felt like they had a stake in the company's success. Elon knew there was still a long way to go, but he could see the transformation taking place. It wasn't just about Tesla building the world's best electric cars. It was about building a company that truly cared for the people who made it all possible. As he walked through the factory floor one evening, he saw a group of employees, laughing together, sharing stories, and enjoying their work. For the first time in a long time, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was what he had always wanted for Tesla, a place where people didn't just work hard, but also felt connected, supported, and valued. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And for the first time in a long while, Elon Musk believed that Tesla was on the right path, but there were still challenges ahead. A new crisis was looming, one that would test everything he had worked for. And as much as Elon had changed the culture within the company, there was still one thing he hadn't addressed: the competition. Tesla was going to have to face its biggest rival yet. And this time, it wasn't just about innovation. It was about proving that Tesla's people-first philosophy could not only survive but thrive in the cutthroat world of electric vehicles. The road ahead would be tough, but Elon Musk was ready. And this time, he wasn't just fighting for the company's success. He was fighting for the people who made it all possible. Tesla's momentum was building. Employees were more engaged, the culture had shifted, and productivity was on the rise. But just as the company began to feel like it was turning a corner, something unexpected happened. The competition ramped up, and it wasn't just any competitor. It was the car industry's newest disruptor, a rival automaker that was suddenly gaining traction in the electric vehicle market. Elon had always been ahead of the curve when it came to innovation, but this new competitor had a unique combination of technology and financial backing that made it a serious threat. Their cars were sleek, their tech was impressive, and their marketing campaign was aggressive. It wasn't long before their electric vehicles were starting to steal the spotlight from Tesla. The company's market share was slipping, and the pressure was mounting. It was the first real test of the new culture Elon had worked so hard to build. The pressure to perform had always been a part of Tesla's DNA, but now it wasn't just about numbers, it was about survival. If Tesla couldn't compete with this new rival, everything they had worked for could unravel. The executive team had called a meeting to discuss the situation. Elon could feel the tension in the room as soon as he entered. He'd always prided himself on leading with boldness, but this time the stakes felt different. The energy in the room was palpable. There was no avoiding the challenge ahead. "All right, everyone," Elon began, standing at the head of the table. "I know we're all aware of the situation. The competition is heating up. They're coming for us and they're coming fast. But here's the thing. We've been through challenges before and we've always come out stronger." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. There was no doubt that everyone in the room was feeling the pressure. They'd been used to being the underdogs, to innovating when no one believed in them. But now they were at the top, and being at the top meant everyone was aiming for them. "We need to step it up," Elon continued, his voice steady. "But we're not going to do it by losing sight of what makes Tesla special. Our strength isn't just in the tech, it's in the people. It's in the culture we've built. And it's in the belief that we can change the world. We can't afford to let that slip." Sarah, now a key leader in Tesla's culture and employee well-being initiatives, spoke up. "Elon, I completely agree. The last few months have been transformative, but we can't lose sight of the fact that people are what make Tesla who we are. If we start pushing people too hard, too fast, we're going to lose that edge. We need to find a balance." Elon nodded thoughtfully. "You're right, we won't compromise our culture for short-term gains. We'll innovate and push ourselves to the limit, but we're going to do it in a way that supports our team, not burns them out. We've made huge strides, and we can't afford to go back." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed Elon's words. It was clear that the team had some tough decisions ahead of them. This wasn't just about beating the competition, it was about staying true to the values that had made Tesla a global force in the first place. Elon spent the following weeks in full-on crisis mode. There was no time to lose. He was deep in strategy meetings with engineers, designers, and marketing teams, brainstorming ideas for the next big breakthrough. The pressure was immense, but for the first time in a while he could feel the company pulling together in a way it hadn't before. Everyone was working toward the same goal, not just to outpace the competition, but to redefine what a car company could be. In the midst of the chaos, Elon made sure to check in with his employees. He wanted to make sure the cultural changes they had implemented didn't get lost in the shuffle. One day, after a particularly intense meeting, he walked through the factory floor, taking time to speak with the workers. He wanted them to know that no matter what, he was still there, still listening. "Hey, how's everything going?" he asked one of the employees working on the assembly line. The man looked up in surprise, clearly not expecting the CEO to be standing there talking to him. "We're good, Mr. Musk," the employee said with a grin. "Busy, but we're pushing through." Elon smiled. "I know the pressure is on, but I want you to know that we're all in this together, and we're going to make sure that everyone's taken care of. You're doing great work." It wasn't much, but Elon could see the difference in the way people responded to him now. There was a sense of camaraderie that hadn't been there before, a belief that no matter what happened, they were all fighting for the same cause. As the weeks dragged on, Tesla's leadership team worked tirelessly to improve their competitive edge. They accelerated their plans for new models, pushed the boundaries of their battery technology, and ramped up production. But through it all, Elon kept his focus on the employees. He made sure that the wellness programs remained a priority and that no one was burning out. But then, just as things started to stabilize, the storm hit. Tesla had been quietly working on a new electric truck model, something that would revolutionize the market. It was set to launch in just a few months, but the rival company had managed to get wind of the project. They had a similar model in the works, and they had just announced it with a glitzy, high-profile launch. The timing couldn't have been worse. Elon knew that they were about to face the most intense competition they had ever encountered. The ISA's stakes were higher than ever. And now Tesla wasn't just fighting to stay ahead. It was fighting to protect its legacy. He couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation. The pressure was unlike anything he had faced before. Every decision, every move mattered. There was no room for error. Late one night, Elon sat alone in his office, staring out over the factory floor. The lights were dimmed, and the building was eerily quiet. He thought about the journey Tesla had taken, from the early days in the garage to becoming the leader of the electric vehicle revolution. He thought about the countless employees who had poured their hearts and souls into the company, and about the families who depended on Tesla's success. And for the first time in a long while, he realized something important. It wasn't just about beating the competition. It was about staying true to Tesla's mission, to create a world where electric cars weren't just a luxury, but a necessity. To continue changing the world, one vehicle at a time. And to make sure that the people behind those vehicles were always at the heart of it. Elon stood up from his desk, determination flooding his chest. The storm may have been brewing, but Tesla was ready. He was ready. And no matter what came next, he knew one thing for sure. They would weather it together. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Elon felt confident. They had faced countless challenges before, but this time they were fighting for something bigger than just survival. They were fighting for the future, and that was a fight he was willing to take on, no matter what, as the launch of Tesla's new electric truck loomed closer. The pressure to deliver was unbearable. The stakes had never been higher. The rival company had unveiled their electric truck, and their marketing campaign had been nothing short of spectacular. It was sleek, fast, and on the surface, appeared to have everything Tesla's new model lacked. But Elon wasn't one to back down from a challenge, and neither were the people at Tesla. In the face of this fierce competition, Elon knew that Tesla's strength wasn't just in technology, it was in its people. The passion and drive of the employees were what made Tesla different from every other car manufacturer out there. They weren't just building cars, they were building the future. Elon gathered the leadership team in the war room. The room was buzzing with activity. Designers, engineers, marketing professionals, and analysts all pored over the final details of the electric truck launch. The launch date was set, and the team was finalizing plans for what would be the most important event in Tesla's history to date. Elon, Greg, the senior manager, said, his voice steady but tinged with concern. The rival company's truck has been getting incredible attention. Their launch event was massive, and the media is all over it. We've got to step up our game. Elon nodded thoughtfully. I know, but we've got something they don't. We've got heart. We've got a team that's committed to making the world a better place. And we've got a product that's not just about performance. It's about the bigger picture. It's about sustainability, energy, and the future. Sarah, now a key figure in the leadership team, spoke up, her voice calm but firm. We've always been about more than just cars. It's about the mission, about changing the way the world thinks about transportation. We've got to stay true to that. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed Sarah's words. The path forward wasn't going to be easy, but they all knew she was right. Tesla wasn't just in the business of making electric vehicles. They were on a mission to change the world. Elon turned to his team, his voice resolute. We're not backing down. We're going to show the world who we are. This is our moment, and we're going to make it count. The days leading up to the launch were a blur of activity. Tesla's team worked tirelessly, pulling all-nighters, to perfect every detail of the truck's design, performance, and features. Elon was right there with them, his usual drive and intensity keeping the momentum going. But he also took the time to check in with his employees, reminding them that they were in this together. I know the pressure's on, he told the team one day, his voice full of conviction. But we're not just here to meet expectations. We're here to exceed them. We're here to show the world that Tesla isn't just a car company. It's a movement that's about more than just cars. It's about making the future better for all of us. Elon's words resonated with the team. It wasn't just about beating the competition. It was about proving that Tesla's culture of innovation, sustainability, and care for its employees was the driving force behind their success. This was more than just a business. It was a mission. The night before the big launch, Elon stood on the rooftop of Tesla's headquarters, looking out over the city. The lights of the factory below twinkled, and the distant hum of the electric cars on the roads reminded him of how far Tesla had come. But he also knew that the future wasn't guaranteed. It was in their hands, his and his team's. He thought back to his time undercover, the people he had met, the conversations he'd had. It had all led to this moment. He wasn't just fighting for Tesla's success. He was fighting for the people who believed in the mission, the ones who poured their hearts into making a difference, and he wasn't going to let them down. The launch event finally arrived. The media was buzzing, the anticipation was palpable, and the world was watching. Elon stood backstage, waiting for the moment to unveil Tesla's new electric truck. The team had put everything they had into this moment, and the weight of it hung in the air. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves. But it wasn't the pressure of the event that made him anxious. It was the responsibility he felt for his people. This was their chance to prove to the world what they were capable of. Elon, Sarah said, her voice calm, but there was a hint of excitement in her eyes. It's time, he nodded. Let's do this. The lights dimmed and the crowd fell silent. The spotlight hit the stage as Elon stepped forward, his face illuminated by the glow of the lights. The cameras flashed, and the audience waited with bated breath. Elon Musk, the announcer's voice boomed, the man who changed. The world with electric vehicles is about to unveil something that will define the future of transportation. Elon smiled, his heart pounding in his chest. He wasn't just unveiling a product, he was unveiling the future. He walked to the center of the stage, and with a dramatic pause, he said, "Tonight, I'm proud to introduce to you not just a truck, not just a vehicle, but a new way of thinking, a new way of driving, the future of transportation." He stepped aside, and the massive curtain behind him dropped, revealing Tesla's new electric truck. The crowd gasped, and the applause erupted. It wasn't just the truck that impressed them, it was the vision behind it. The truck was sleek, powerful, and efficient, but it was also a symbol of Tesla's commitment to a sustainable, innovative future. The truck wasn't just a response to the competition, it was Tesla's answer to the world's need for change. The media erupted in praise, and Tesla's stock began to climb. The launch event was a resounding success, and the positive reception only bolstered the morale of the employees. But Elon knew that the real test was still ahead. The competition wouldn't give up easily. The pressure to perform would only grow. But one thing was clear. Tesla had weathered the storm. They had shown the world that they weren't just about cars. They were about changing the world. And as the applause continued to fill the air, Elon Musk felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: peace. They had done it. They had not only risen to the challenge, they had surpassed it. As the night wore on, Elon stood backstage, surrounded by his team. They were exhausted, but the pride in their eyes was unmistakable. "Elon," Sarah said, her voice filled with emotion. "We did it." Elon nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "No, we did it. Together." And for the first time in a long time, Elon realized that the true measure of success wasn't just in the cars they made, but in the people they had become. Tesla had faced its greatest challenge yet, and they had come out stronger than ever. But the road ahead would not be without its hurdles. The competition would keep pushing, the pressures would keep mounting, and new challenges would arise, but Elon Musk was ready. And Tesla was more than prepared for whatever came next. Together, they would continue to drive the future forward, and nothing would stop them. The dust had barely settled after the truck's launch, and already the world had begun to take notice. The competition, of course, wasn't idle. But the electric truck, alongside Tesla's remarkable innovation in sustainability and tech, was proving to be a force no one could ignore. And as much as the spotlight shone on Tesla's immediate success, Elon Musk knew that the journey was far from over. He stood in front of the Tesla production line, his hands in his pockets, watching as employees worked tirelessly. The team had pulled off something monumental, but Elon had no illusions. Success wasn't about one event. It was about the consistency of effort over time. Every day was a new challenge to remain at the top. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Tesla's electric truck was being praised for its powerful performance, cutting-edge features, and sleek design. It had exceeded the highest expectations, but now it was time to prove that this wasn't just a flash-in-the-pan success. Elon and the leadership team spent countless hours meeting with engineers, designers, and even suppliers to ensure that production was smooth. The anticipation surrounding the truck was growing, and Tesla had to ensure they could meet the demand, without sacrificing quality or innovation. At the same time, the rivalry with the competitor company intensified. They had launched their own truck, but the comparison wasn't favorable. While they were still in the game, it was clear that Tesla's model was becoming the gold standard. "Don't get complacent," Elon would tell his team during meetings. "Just because we're leading now doesn't mean we'll stay there forever. We've got to keep innovating every single day." One afternoon, as the sun started to set and the factory lights flickered on, Sarah found herself standing next to Elon, looking out at the production floor. The rhythm of the factory was almost calming. "You know," she said, "sometimes I think people forget just how much goes into all of this. They see the cars, they see the headlines, but they don't see the team working behind the scenes. The late nights, the sacrifices." Elon glanced at her, a slight smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "That's the hardest part," he said quietly. "The pressure, the late nights, the grind, it all gets overshadowed by the final product. But it's those moments when no one's watching that shape us. That's where the real work happens." Sarah nodded, her eyes following the movements of the workers on the floor. "It's incredible what we've built, Elon. Not just the cars, but the culture. It's a machine that works because everyone believes in the same mission. It's not just about making cars, it's about changing the world." The next day, Elon had one of his routine visits to the engineering team, where the mood was focused, but tense. They were making final tweaks to a new technology that would increase the truck's range and efficiency, but there were still hurdles to overcome. "We're getting there," said Andrew, the lead engineer on the project. "But it's not just about making this work now. We have to think about how we're going to keep improving year after year. There's no finish line here." Elon raised an eyebrow. "That's exactly the mindset we need. Tesla's never been about creating one perfect thing. We've always got to be thinking ahead, and if we're not looking at the next 5 years, we're already falling behind." Andrew nodded, deep in thought. "Exactly, and if we get this right, we'll change the whole industry again." Elon smiled. "We're not just changing the industry, we're changing the world." Weeks turned into months, and Tesla's momentum continued to build. More cars were being delivered, more trucks were being ordered, and more media outlets were writing about the company's triumph. Yet even as Tesla's star continued to rise, Elon felt a shift in his perspective. The adrenaline that had always fueled him was still there, but something had changed within him. As the company grew, so did his awareness of the responsibility that came with leading Tesla. It wasn't just about creating the next big thing. It was about making sure that everything they did, from production to their environmental impact, aligned with their mission of sustainability. It was about ensuring that the employees who had helped Tesla get this far were taken care of, and that their vision was carried forward into every new challenge they faced. In one of his late-night sessions, where he was reviewing plans for Tesla's future, he thought about something Sarah had said months ago, the idea that people were at the heart of everything Tesla had built. He couldn't help but realize how true that was. Tesla's success wasn't just about innovation. It was about a collective effort, from the engineers to the factory workers to the marketing team. Everyone had played a role. Elon's phone buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. It was a message from Sarah, simply reading, "We need to talk." The following morning, Elon met with Sarah in the conference room. She had always been a steady hand, someone who could see the bigger picture while keeping an eye on the details. "We've got a problem," she said. No preamble. Elon sat forward, sensing the seriousness in her tone. "What's going on?" "It's the culture. People are starting to feel the pressure again. We've done so much to change things, But we're reaching a point where employees are starting to burn out. The long hours, the expectation to always innovate, it's starting to take a toll. Elon frowned. I thought we had this covered. We've put in the wellness programs, the initiatives to keep the stress down. I know, Sarah interrupted. But it's the nature of the business, the pressure's not going away. We need to reinforce that culture, remind everyone of what we're working toward. It's not just about working hard, it's about working with purpose. Elon took a deep breath. I don't want to lose sight of what makes us who we are. I won't let Tesla fall into the trap of burning people out just to meet deadlines. We need a different approach. More communication, more recognition, and more focus on the mission. Elon and Sarah began to implement new strategies. They focused on creating more avenues for employees to engage in open conversations about their well-being. They rolled out initiatives to ensure that teams had time to recharge without compromising their ambition to succeed. And perhaps most importantly, they worked harder than ever to ensure that every employee understood the impact of their work, not just on the company, but on the future of the planet. With every small adjustment, Tesla began to feel like more than just a company. It felt like a family, a mission-driven community that shared the same belief, that they were working for something bigger than themselves. Months later, the media spotlight once again turned to Elon Musk and Tesla, but this time, the focus wasn't just on their groundbreaking technology. It was on the culture they had created, a culture of innovation, sustainability, and care. The world was beginning to see that Tesla wasn't just about building cars, they were about changing the future. Elon had done it. Not only had he transformed the auto industry, but he had also built something that would last, something that would continue to change the world long after he was gone. And as he looked out over the Tesla campus one final time, Elon Musk knew that the legacy of Tesla was no longer just in the cars they built, but in the people who believed in the mission. The road ahead would always be filled with challenges. But one thing was certain. Tesla's journey was far from over. It was just beginning. And with a company, a team, and a vision like theirs, the world would never be the same, and neither would Elon Musk.